and we're here for our mental health. Sometimes standing at a stove, watching a pot, making sure it doesn't burn, doesn't feel as good as just jarring it up and calling it a good day. So I'll see you guys later. Merry meet and welcome. I'm Taylor and we're going to be making Joey's marinara sauce. So with that, I am of course adjusting it, even though it already is plant-based. I'm going to be adjusting it for what I have available for me. So I do have basil because I'm using it for the pizza, so I do have some fresh basil. However, the rest of my herbs are dried, so I just combined about a tablespoon of each because dried spices are always more potent than fresh. So I have oregano, thyme, and parsley all in here. We have our onion, we have garlic. Instead of honey, I'm using blue agave syrup, although I do prescribe to supporting your local bee keepers and getting honey from them so that, you know, we can support our local bees. And then that's oil right there, and then of course we have our crushed tomatoes. So we're gonna go ahead and get started on this. Oh, and then we also have some water right there. We're gonna go ahead, get started on this. This should be right. So we have a large saucepan here and we have our heat turned on to about medium low, but that's because I'm on a gas range. But you're gonna wanna be in about medium heat. Just understanding your stove will help you determine exactly how hot your utensils get. And then I did not pre-measure this out, but we're going to use about 2 tablespoons of oil. So I learned that that's about 1, 2. Really hope you could see that. Essentially, I just went around here, just in case. I essentially just went around in a circle twice. I've been taught that, like, no matter what kind of pan you're using, that's about how many that's 1, 2 tablespoons, you know, if you go around 2 times. All right, so we're just letting this heat up a little bit before we're going to go ahead and add in our onions after about a minute, and we're going to saute them until they're about translucent and aromatic, sorry. So again, this is when it's going to just be based off of your stove and like play around with your heat, just getting to know it, but you're wanting to pay more attention to how your food looks and smells versus like how long you've actually had it in there. So like for oil, for instance, you can see I'm kind of tipping it back and forth. What I learned when I was working at Waffle House is that oil, and you've probably seen this too, is that oil tends to thin out as it heats up. So whenever you're moving it around your pan, like when you first put oil into a cold pan, you'll notice like, oh, it's really hard to like move this around and make sure like all the sides of the pan are oiled up. And then when you do it after it's been on the heat for a minute, you notice that it's really easy, like you almost have too much oil. So let's go ahead, we're gonna add in our onions here. You can see that we really let our oil get hot there. It is nice to have that sizzle, but don't worry if you don't have it. And then we're gonna mix those in. I like to make sure I get oil on all of the onion. And then you can just stir this every once in a while. If you're super focused on it, then you can like just be here with it. If you are like prepping ingredients in the meantime, you can do that too. Since I'm using this to support anxiety, all my ingredients are prepped. That's why, because I cannot tell you how many times I've like needed to cut something that needs to be added like right then and there. So always read your recipe, folks. But oh, got some steam there. Let's back up. So yeah, onions tend to cook very fast. And like I said, that's the other thing too, like you just want to get to know your stuff, because if you have a lot of oil, sometimes they don't turn as translucent as much as you would like to. So like these still need a little bit longer. Because you can tell that they don't, you essentially want them to look like they're melting if they don't become translucent completely and retain that like oily color. Okay, so we kind of lost you guys there for a minute because I pressed a button. So my onions. So they're looking, you can tell like they have a little bit brown to them. They're getting a little bit more translucent. So they're just about to where I want them to be. I probably could keep doing this for another like 30 seconds. So I love to season right before they're done rather than after, and to just mix that flavor all into it, and that way they still have that oil is still getting a little bit infused with the spices as well. So for right now, the only thing that we're adding is salt and pepper. I have a pepper grinder, but my salt grinder is not working, so I will not be grinding the salt, just the pepper. But yeah, and you just want to do this to taste it, whatever feels right to you. If you're like, if you want to really play around, you don't have to do any of it. If you're like trying to watch your sodium, even more reasons why it's great to make your pizza sauce yourself. Which that is something to talk about, is we are just making pizza sauce yourself right now, but this is you're totally fine to just buy it yourself. This is just to give you more control over what it's going into it, as well as like if you're trying to manage any of your like micros. Okay, so this has gotten a little bit charged, so I'm going to turn it down a little bit. I know you can't see it, I'm not going to show it to you just yet, because what we're actually going to do right now is to also help those onions from stop cooking, is we're going to add in a jar of crushed tomatoes. So this recipe does in fact have ways for you to just completely make this from scratch with Roma tomatoes. I just didn't want to. I just didn't want to go through that whole process today and go through it. So I just bought the crushed tomatoes instead, which it does say, like, it does give you like how much to buy even for that portion. So really great. I'm just mixing this to make sure I get those onions off of the bottom of the pan. The other things that we're going to go ahead and add now to make sure that we're just mixing in all of our flavors is going to be our basil. And then pretty much all of our herbs. So I just have them separated because I have the basils fresh and the rest aren't. This is kind of an experiment too, because I technically have dried basil too. So I could have gone with that, but I just really needed to use up that fresh basil, which is part of the reason why I don't have all these other fresh ones, because you only use so much in a recipe. Okay. And then we're also going to add our garlic as well to this, which you could have sauteed this. I actually think it's interesting that we didn't saute this with the onions. So that might be a personal preference. Sorry, like garlic sticking to me. And then because we now have a whole bunch of tomatoes in there, we're going to season again with salt and pepper. So a lot of times you'll find the reason why I say salt and pepper to taste is because you actually really want a good amount of it, but it's not necessarily necessary. It doesn't make the flavor combinations aren't really missing if you don't have these things, but there is something. And I think if you work a lot more with salt, that you'll find like, oh, salt is a magical seasoning, how it just transforms flavors. So now I did turn my heat back up because I just wanted those onions to calm down, but we actually want this. Let me show you what's happening inside here. See, just nice, super easy. We actually want it to get into a boil. So as always, you're going to see it start to boil on the outside because that's the easiest place for it to release air, but we're very soon going to see it boiling in the center here. And then because when you stir is also how you release air, technically it'll boil. You want it to get to a boiling point when it boils while you're able to stir as well. And the faster you stir, the more air you release, and the less likely it's going to boil as you do it. And this kind of breaks down the flavors. It's going to help like stew the herbs into there as well. And you just really want it to kind of get to that boiling point for about a few minutes and just to feel good. Because then after this, we're going to go ahead and let it simmer and just get to the consistency that you would like it to be at. Because tomatoes cook very fast. I mean, if you've ever had a fresh tomato on your pizza, you know that still tastes really good. So this really just comes down more to like how you like the taste and how imbued you want the flavors to be. So yeah, this pretty much is how it's going to look. And I'm just waiting for it to boil a bit more. Okay, so if you're on a gas range like I am, you may find that it's easier to go ahead and let that boil kind of be good enough, because then if you want it to simmer, it's going to, you can't turn off your heat completely, but even on a low heat, it continues to grow. It doesn't necessarily stay on a low heat, so it is difficult to simmer and not to bring it back to a boil. So again, just learning to play around with the heat and the consistencies that you want is going to be so important. So this sauce is actually going to be something more to play around with and just to get to know you and your stove a lot better. So I'll catch you guys next time. I'm going to go ahead and set this down. Okay, so we are back because I forgot something. So because I like the idea of this is why I'm doing it. It is optional, as is the water. The water is more for consistency if you want that. And then the honey or the agave syrup is if you want to lessen the acidity. I personally just love the idea of having a little bit of sweetness into this as well. So I'm going to add about a tablespoon of agave, not all of it, which is why I didn't pre-measure it out. And I'm just going to mix that, and it's going to be a part of our mixture here. And now I'm going to let it simmer for about an hour. I have it on low heat. I am going to have to watch it. As you saw, it has already been on low heat, and it still somewhat boils up at the top. So I'm going to have to watch it. It's probably going to be done a lot sooner than an hour, which is good. I'm probably only going to keep it probably here for like 20 minutes, honestly. Again, because it's just more about how balanced you want those flavors to be. And we're here for our mental health. Sometimes standing at a stove, watching a pot, making sure it doesn't burn, doesn't feel as good as just jarring it up and calling it a good day. So I'll see you guys later when we're putting it in our jar. Bye. All right, merry meet again. So I am done simmering this. I think it's very key to understand how much this is a go by your whim. I feel okay doing this right now, but I cannot stand up here for an hour moment. Anyways, so now I'm going to attempt to pour this into my jar. See, I don't have a funnel, but it's so thick. I'm worried about the viscosity. What should I do? Okay, because you probably have noticed, I have a little, I don't know if you can see it, but I have a little spout on the edge of this, to where technically you would think, oh yeah, you can pour it, but it's so thick that it's sticking together that I'm not comfortable doing it right off the bat. So I'm gonna actually do this little trick where I'm gonna take a serving spoon and just literally spoon it in there. I still have to be careful because see, I still can get it everywhere. I actually don't even know what you can see, to be fair, so it may just be steam. But yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead, spoon this in there. Now, this is supposed to be enough for two. Honestly, it looked so much. Even though I'm literally going to be using half of this today, I wanted to see exactly how much it could fill up because I feel like, look how much that is. This is a huge jar. This is not your standard mason jar. Do I know the size of this jar? No. It goes up to the 800 mark. I don't know what that means, but because I just like, you know, you collect jars. Okay, so if I look on this side, okay, here we go. So it's about 24 ounces inside this jar. We just learned something new together. Okay, so getting a little bit to the bottom, enough to where, let's see, feeling comfortable, confident, here we go. Sometimes it's also about speed, because I don't know if you could see, there were moments where it was just like as thick as the opening. And then, and if I would have slowed down, it definitely would have ended up going down the sides. But because we still kept that point of tension strong and a stream going down, it still went into it. Kind of like how like sands of time look, and how it gets down into that middle point. Like, that's just a very natural way when there's a spout. But there we go. It fills up 24 ounces of tomato sauce. How cool. So I'm gonna enjoy this. I did taste test it, which is something I always recommend while you're cooking, and then that way you can add your flavors as it's simmering and doing whatnot. And I think it tastes so good. It tastes better than other pizza sauces I have had, and it tastes like some of the best ones that I've had. So like, it definitely is more than tomato sauce, and that is really my goal today. Is like, I could dip pizza, like a pizza breadstick, into this, and I would still be like, yes, this fits it. It's more than tomato sauce. Anyways, there's our tomato sauce though, or Joey's marinara sauce. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye.